It doesn't matter who you are, what world you run, when you're sitting at that toilet doing that thing, it's pretty much like you're humbled. You're just like everyone else. That's the connection, because it doesn't matter where we are in human history. No one likes to be embarrassed in front of others. No one likes these certain quirks. They're little reminders of like connections. Also makes me just feel better about myself when I mess up. Hey, this is my work. But yeah, you don't think I'm cool? That's fine.
Welcome to the Masters of Integration podcast. We aim to change the narrative from Jack of all trades, master of none, to Jack of all trades, master of integration. Join us as we talk to people who have discovered how to combine one thing with another so that they become whole. We will hear how their journeys have shaped who they have become and their unique successes. Our hope is that their stories will inspire you to find your purpose, discover who you are, and integrate your diverse passions and skills into your life. To being whole. Let's go. Bro, what's up, man?
We're here.
How you feeling, dude?
Oh, man. Well, I'm surrounded by a lot of paintings, so it feels pretty good, but scary at the same time.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. Dude, thanks so much for taking the time to do this podcast. I know you're in the middle of a crunch and a deadline, right?
Yes. I got about 4 weeks left to finish this work. It's going to Bucharest, Romania, with Nicodeme Gallery. So it's my first European show, so it's pretty fun stuff.
Yeah, dude, that's super cool. You had one in New York and the other one in LA, right?
Mm-hmm. Last year was New York. Yeah, that's right. LA. And yeah, both were awesome. Really cool shows.
You said they were sold out, right?
Yes, technically, yes. Well, yeah, they were both sold out.
Cool.
I'm not rich though, so this is an artist's life, feast, famine. That's how it is.
Word.
But yeah, so it's a really huge space in Bucharest. It's like almost looks like a hangar. So I mean, it looks like there's a lot of work in here, but once it's in that space, there's going to be a lot of space between the paintings. So
is it just your work that's going to be in there?
yeah.
So it's a solo show in Romania.
Mm-hmm.
In a hangar.
No, it's not a hangar, but it's like, I'm pretty sure it could fit a couple airplanes in there. It's huge. It's really big. So it's a little intimidating to fill a space like that, but I had a little over a year to do it. So
how many pieces do you have to make?
I think there's going to be about 12 large and then a handful of small paintings.
Dang.
So we'll see.
Wait, so you're telling me that, like, okay, what kind of people go to this thing and how do they know about it? Like, how, like, I don't know the world. Like, it's so new. Okay, so Larry Madrigal paints in his studio, all this epic work in a year, goes to Romania, puts all his artwork up, and then people from all over the world.
Well, it just depends on where it is. So it'll be up for about a month, maybe, I think.
Okay.
It's usually about 6 weeks for a show. And then there's usually other galleries in these cities. And so everyone knows, they get newsletters of there's the next solo show is this person. And then so people just come out and see the work. And if you're in a major city like London or New York, there's usually hundreds of galleries within walking distance. So there's a lot of turnaround there. So I don't know Romania that well. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
First time in Europe. I've never been there.
Oh, wow,
So,
that's sick. Oh,
yeah, I don't know.
That's so cool, man. Dude, I'm just really curious. You don't have to answer these questions, but I'm going to ask them. But it blows my mind. I don't fully even understand how you got into this world and like how you're about to go to Romania for your art. It's like, and that's how you're getting to Europe for the first time is because of your art, right? Like that's like every kid's dream. Like how does one even do that? How does that even become a thing? How did you do that?
Well, I mean, part of it is like, I always think the big part of it's like luck, but oh man, where do I even start? This whole journey of making it in the art world is crazy. But when I went into grad school, I decided that I had a vision for the kind of work I wanted to make. And so instead of trying to figure out who I was trying to like get to this goal of this building a body of work. There were some things along the way that shifted who I thought I was as a painter. But after grad school, I just met some great artists that I think helped me get on the map. You know, I went out to LA once to do some studio visits, and I think Instagram was a huge part of helping get my work out there. But that didn't happen unless I had put in all this time making all these paintings and having close-ups of them, and because I knew no one was going to drive out to Phoenix to visit my studio, so like I had to create a hospitable Instagram environment. So when people went to my Instagram, they could get a sense of my studio, like a studio visit, you know? So I got lucky that I got to be invited with the solo show with Nicodeme Gallery as my first solo show. And they happen to be an international gallery. So they have a space in LA, New York, Bucharest. And so they cycle their artists through those venues. So that's kind of how it all happened.
So like my only concept for the art world, right, is like how an artist gets signed by a record label, right? Mm-hmm. So my perception of this is like, all right, there's a bunch of artists out there. This gallery is like, yo, you fit what we're about, our message and whatever, I don't know, whatever that may be. We want to sign you to our artists.
They call it representing.
Okay. So we
want to represent you.
Oh, yeah. So then there's like a whole legal contract and everything, or how does that work?
It's all different. Some galleries have a rigid contract, others don't. Some might have a contract just for a certain type of work, some a 2-year contract. But then once you are represented, ideally you kind of get thrown into a cycle of exhibitions, and they take care of shipping and handling, and you split the cost of, that's just general art world stuff. You just make the work, they pick it up, they sell it, and then it's 50-50. So the idea is that I just work on this stuff, and then the deadline comes and the shippers come and they just take it all away, and then I don't worry about it. So I mean, that's ideally, because you're an artist, right? You should be just focusing on your work. So yeah. And the art world is huge right now. Anyone can make it in the art world. There's so many galleries now. You can start in so many different places. And it really is just about, number one, the work is always about like honing in on your craft and then number two is getting that work out there once it's out there, and then making connections and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, it was, I was done with grad school. I did one trip out to LA, and the trip was just to visit a couple friends, and then a special studio visit for a painter that I admire. I had no idea this artist liked my work too. So I show up, we do this magical studio visit in this place with all these paintings. I came back, and then about 2 weeks later, this artist that I visited shared my work with their community. That's what got me on the map, just on the radar. And once you're on the radar, it just depends. You never know what happens, but just getting on the radar is important. But you can't get on the radar without having any work to put on the radar. You can't do any work unless you actually like focus. So that's a key. Number one is make work. And then number two is just get it on the radar. But then even to make work, like you can't just make it. You have to be in so many different mental states to kind of like be able to make work that's authentic to you and stuff. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
How to make work that's yours, I guess.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding correctly, the artist that you admired, that you really liked their work, that studio visit, that person liked your art?
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah, I didn't know. So I just was really intrigued with these paintings, and I wanted to visit her studio because we've had some conversations online that I thought were really special. So I said, hey, I'm heading out to LA and, would love to visit your studio. I don't know if you've never been to art school, but one of the cool things about when you first walk into a classroom, you smell turpentine, you smell oil paints, you see easels everywhere, and you think of like, oh, art. And so grad school has a way to kill that in you. You get into a critical theory of all sorts, and the things, the problematic nature of art making here and art making there, and having this identity and making another there. And so you start getting so cerebral with the whole thing that you kind of forget about the magic of why you even want to be an artist to some degree. And this studio visit really sort of had that same effect on me, where I felt like, wow, this is a thought I had. I remember walking in and thinking, looking left and right, thinking, you know what? I can't believe it. I'm in an actual artist studio. Like, this is the real deal. This is a real studio. I'm looking around. I don't see any pretense. I just saw raw concern for the subject matter, the way the marks are laid. It was crazy. I come back home, and 2 weeks later, this artist shares my work on their Instagram and had a whole little paragraph about why they like my paintings and this and that. And this person had a following and a certain reputation for not really BSing on things and stuff. So I think people listen. I think we're like, oh, and then they come see what I'm doing. And I just had my MFA show. No one knows who I am. I'm in Phoenix.
Wait, Tightrope?
Tightrope, yeah.
Oh, sick. So they came to that.
No, they didn't. They got to see all the stuff that you took on
wow.
Because that was a culmination of like 2.5 years of work.
Wow.
And they came and they saw the photographs, the installation shots, they saw the studio shots, close-ups. I mean, it's like when you get a studio visit, what do you get? You get someone walking in, they feel the space. They see you as a person interact, just how you are. They get close up to the work. They look at it from distance. They get this, I see what's laying around here and stuff. So I thought, I got to do all those little things. I didn't think about this that much at the time, but now that I look back, I was like, it was good that I was kind of, once the show and the work was done, I spent some time like really just trying to build up because I had nothing on Instagram for a while. And so it helped me, So, and then I think a lot of artists too, especially when COVID happened, a lot of collectors, you couldn't go see any shows. So what they do, they went online and they saw what was going on there. And so a lot of artists, I think in these other states that are not LA and New York, sort of started getting attention. So
wow,
in a way, it was good for me.
Dude, that's so crazy.
Yeah, but it was. I told my wife that I was going to go to LA once a month to go see shows and stuff and visit studios, and it just took that one trip. It was actually, that trip was February 15th, I remember, because it was the day after Valentine's Day. So I had to make a deal. I was like, we're going to do this special thing on Valentine's Day, but on 15th, can I go to LA real quick? And it was a quick day trip. Stayed the night, came back, me and a friend of mine. And the shutdown happened, March. Mm-hmm. So then we were all in this bubble.
Crazy. So then they just contacted you and they were like, hey, we want to represent you. We love your work.
No, well, it usually starts with like all kinds of people just sharing interest and oftentimes it's a collectors wanting to purchase a painting.
Okay.
Because once it's in the hands of a gallery, they're paying a lot more. So the collectors would want, one or two, maybe three. If they get lucky, an entire show, they get everything. And then this artist actually helped me a lot. I didn't know what to do. I was like, hey, all these people are asking me. And she was saying, don't sell anything. This is a good sign. Don't let go of some of these works. And I'm glad I didn't, because when I was finally offered my first show, I couldn't make a whole new body of work in like 4 months. And I had like 3 or 4 months to do this. So I only agreed to do the show if I can use pre-existing works with new works. So then this first solo show was almost a transition between grad school and I think that's how it should be. Like sometimes we want like this pristine, irrefutable product out there, not even product, but vision, story, image, just to be out there. It's hard, like we were talking about transitions earlier. Mm-hmm. And I've been learning to just embrace the transitions, embrace those awkward paintings. Like, I mean, if we can't ever make a bad painting, will we ever make a painting? No, it's like one of those moments. If you are not allowed to make a bad painting, will you ever make an actual painting? If you're not allowed to make a bad one. I mean, people make bad ones, they just don't show them. But I try to save every painting. But that first trip was weird because I didn't anticipate any of this stuff. But that's the power of art. It's important for artists to have artist friends, and they don't teach you anything about the art market in grad school. You don't know anything about collectors, galleries, none of that stuff. If I sold my entire show, I would have made some money. Yeah. But then when it was time to have my first solo show, I mean, what I was saying is if I sold all the pre-existing works, I would have had 4 months to create a body of work for a show. I would have just become a different painter. I would have became more efficient, slightly diluted. Maybe not. I don't know. But it feels like that's what would have happened. And then the more you get thrown into the cycle, the more you just have to become more efficient. So the art market's really quick. It's really hard to exist in the art market and have more of a slow disposition, more of a chewing on things than it is a nice visual bang. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Connections are important.
Yeah. No, dude, that's wild, man. A quote that came in my head. It was 2012, I think, when Macklemore dropped his first album. And I think it was in 10,000 Hours. But he goes like, artists aren't great because at first they could paint. They're great because they paint a lot. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then there was like this other quote of like, I don't know.
Wait, what did you say? They're not great because they paint? They're great because they paint a lot? How does it go?
Artists aren't great because at first they could paint, like that from birth they could paint. Is because they paint a lot. Like something like that. I'll have to find the quote exactly. But I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I don't know who it was from another book, but just like, you got to make a lot of bad art. You know what I mean? In order to make good art. And just like in my journey of like music early on, it was like, oh, I just gotta make bad songs, like be okay with the bad songs. Like I gotta keep on writing and keep on writing. It's just really cool to hear also what you say, that if you sold that stuff, that you would be a different painter, that you would be more efficient. That's so interesting.
I would have had to. I would have had no choice. I would have 4 months to create. It was like I had all these giant paintings that I'd done in 2 years,
Yeah.
I was offered to do a show of small works. And so my small works, just were a different type. And that's a side of me, even some of the undesirable things you make, there's still a reason why you made them, and that's a side of you. And sometimes like we're so quick to kill that side off because it doesn't work in this market, or it's not the side that we prefer to show. It's not my good side. That's my overly overthinking side. That's my meandering side. That's my what's that called? There's another word for the just kind of overdoing it, But that's a side of me, and so for me, keeping those things alive, keep them alive as long as you can. And they'll play into the new work, and they'll synthesize as you keep making that stuff, So I think it was David Sally said that the same characteristics we like in people, we like in art. So he said something like, we don't like an undecisive airhead or something like that, So like if a work is pretty much alluding to the fact that if a work is undecisive and like kind of empty of anything, then we don't like it either. But okay, so my response to that thought, because I respect David Sally a lot, don't get me wrong, he's an amazing painter. But my thought to that was, if we're overthinking that aspect of making art and always concerned with the present itself, the end product, then we're always going to get the present itself. We're not going to get the person tripping all the way up the stairs. We're going to get the perfect flow up the stairs. We're going to get the perfect Met Gala. We're not going to get the person tripping off the Met Gala that sets everyone else at ease. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be a painter, I'll be the guy that trips on the way up to the Met Gala and then set everyone at ease.
I love that, bro.
As an artist, you know what I mean?
Oh, dude, it's so good, man. Oh, I love that.
Just embracing that part because...
I see that. I mean, I see that, especially like your earlier work too, like super clear, man. I love that.
The earlier work I did, I would overdo the love handle sometimes. Like even now, I'm still putting ball spots in my head, even though but it's just, there's something about not taking yourself too seriously, but then painting it as seriously as possible. Those things were important to me. I think that's what helped me. Like trying to paint my weakness with all my strength is something I used to say. That's one of those little punchline things.
That's a good one. That's a bar, bro.
There's always, in podcasts, you always have to have a nugget.
That's it.
All podcasts, we were talking about this earlier, but all podcasts are just nugget bombs. Oh, that sounds weird, nugget bomb. But if you think about it, with TikTok and everything, all you get is, well, actually, if you think about it, it's this, and it's actually this, and everything you thought about was wrong because of this. And then you're like, whoa. But...
Yeah, dude. Okay, but one of the things I really think is super sick is that intentionality of, what was it? Say it again. You like to paint your weaknesses with all your
strength.
With all your strength. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I think that's super cool because when I started seeing your work even more back then, it was really encouraging to me in my journey because I was in a place of when I was doing music more and was like, okay, cool, like. I was just trying to like preach like, yo, you just got to keep on creating. You got to keep on creating. You just got to keep on doing it, and eventually something good will come, But a lot of the artists that I was talking with and doing music with, they were always like, I don't want to post this,
Oh, yeah. The curated.
Yeah. They're like, I don't want to post this. I don't put this on YouTube. I don't want to, because it's just not good. And I'm like, look, if you don't put it up, then you don't invite anyone else to the process, and no one else sees that like it took this to get to where they were to become. Yeah.
Or even if it didn't take that, sometimes, okay, when you say not posting this, is it part of the craft or is it just like an everyday life thing? Is it usually
it's
part
like
of the craft?
Yeah, it's like a song. Okay. It's like a song, like a song that they wrote, but they weren't happy with it. They're like, oh, it's not perfect. It's not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, but this is so beautiful for its time. For when you did it, it was great. Like, share it with the world. I think it's important. You know?
Well, we live in the reputation is everything.
Well, yeah.
Like we were talking earlier about when I was into music and stuff. Oh, that's so cringing. It's cringy for me to see that. But weren't we all doing weird things when we were young, like getting into everything? But I thought when you were talking about that, I was thinking of posting just kind of things of your personal life or showing yourself in vulnerable places. So you're talking about the journey of showing how you got to where you are. It's funny because there was a famous painter named Wayne Thiebaud. Do you know Wayne Thiebaud? He paints like the cupcakes and ice creams, and they're really goopy.
I think I saw it maybe.
Someone might call me out. This might be legend, but I think he said this in. Who told me this? There was an exhibition a retrospective, or almost every show he would have these specific paintings right in the front of the show in the beginning. And most curators didn't want those paintings to be there because they weren't strong. And they're like, why do you always insist on having this one painting? I think it might have been one painting at the very front of the show. And he just said, I just wanted people to know how hard I worked to get where I am. This is where I was.
Bars, bro. Oh, I love
But for me, what does that look like? Is it my first drawing? Is it my graffiti tag book? Like, is it my... Oh, there's some stuff I would not want to show. But those are usually art assignments that you're kind of forced to do as a teacher. Oh, But even in those early works, I look back at early work, not just to show how hard I work, but also to look for clues on what is in my nature to when I make work, to see little threads. Oh, I was still doing this. Even in this assignment, I noticed I was still heading towards this place of light and dark shadow. Like, I can't get rid of that. Like, I'm just inclined to do that.
Yeah.
And so looking at earlier work, for me, helps me make connections to what I'm doing now. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's sick, man. Well, I mean, I think for me personally, when I saw your work early on, right after you graduated, or even a little bit before that, I just realized, like, it was really encouraging me to see, because you were capturing specific parts of your life and you weren't glorifying some different lifestyle. It felt so real, and it felt like I could... You know what I mean? Like, so for me, it wasn't necessarily like you need to show the process of how you started, you know what I mean? But more so that you're showing the process of your actual life in certain ways and depicting them in a countercultural way. This is not what media would show it as. You know what I mean?
So I want to jump in real quick, because if I don't, I'll meander. But there's like several things on why I started kind of depicting myself. Like, if you see my earlier work, it's like a lot of frumpy, hunched over, just like undesired positions of myself. On the intellectual side of things, men have always depicted themselves in like the heroic, glorious, right? So this is a very unheroic view, right? There's still some muscle underneath of that, but then there's like the dad bod kind of hanging down. There's this sort of a weakness, and you would never depict yourself like that back in the day, right? And then I did grow up in this is all the academic kind of things surrounding how I was thinking about my work, the one layer of academia and just cultural analysis. Machismo is a thing in Mexican culture. You show your strength all the time. You don't show your weakness. So like putting myself in, like, showing myself hunched down, trying to take a sock off to do the laundry with chaos everywhere is like this very vulnerable spot. But there's another thing for me. I never felt like the cool kid. I always felt like I was always... There's a certain type of comedy that like you make fun of yourself a lot and it disarms. There's also pride connected to that and all these other issues connected to that, which are all mixed in my head. But this felt right, because I always have this joke with my wife: I could never be smooth. If I try to do something slick and look like a BA, something will just knock me down. It'll come from anywhere. It's happened too many times. It's just like a recipe. When I was created, it was like they're putting the code in, and number of humbling moments from tiny to large, they just kept increasing that number. It's been the story of my life. But when I had my show in New York last year, it was pretty cool, because I was hearing these things. Here is New York's the one show you're supposed to bring it. You know, you're supposed to bring all of you guys. I'm going to New York. I'm going to make work that's grabby and loud. And I couldn't. It was impossible, because my wife was pregnant. She has hard pregnancies. It was a hard time. So I made a work of just like being in the home, ordinary moments, just trying to wrestle with, you know, when you're going to bring a new life, it just brings you into, am I good enough to do this? But that ordinary experience, it gave people a sense of relief for normalcy of just everyday normal life. You can exist in that space and it's okay. You don't have to be this special person. Don't we all want to be special? But someone wrote an article about my work talking about like my work is the aesthetic of relief. And I thought that was really cool. And I think is what you're saying. You felt like, did you feel a little kind of like at ease? Like, and I think...
Yeah, no, bro. I mean, when an aesthetic of relief, I love that. Yeah, I think when I saw it, I felt like it was okay to be me. Like, I felt like, all right, this is the contrast of you, where your work sits and where it gets placed. It doesn't fit. It doesn't belong in terms of the content that you're putting there. I love that so much, man, because I feel like maybe that's how I feel often, is like being brown, you know, and being in certain contexts where I feel like I should be. I'm like, I don't fit in. I don't feel like this is where I belong. But then when I see your work, it like challenges all those things.
Mhm.
And I feel like, oh my gosh, I can sit here and still be me and be good with that and whatever I look like, however I feel inside. Because sometimes maybe your work reflects what I feel inside, you know what I mean? Or how I see myself. But the fact that you can do that and take it into the upper echelons of like society and like have them sit in these galleries, bro, blow my mind.
Oh, thanks.
It was
Yeah,
so
sometimes it's
bro.
really awkward for me to put it up there, but then I'm like, you know what? When I'm dead, they'll be just like a man, you know, like a guy doing this. We're very encouraged to become something special and to be noticed and to, I think, painting a lot of everyday normalcy things, it gives you a sense of relief for that. But for me, from the side of the painter, I had to make my paintings of what I was living in and then charge them with like the wonder and terror and all those things about life and existence, so that in those spaces, I know that it still matters. Those little things still matter. Going to shows, being an artist, being in the cover of XYZ magazine, whatever, written about who knows what. All that stuff's cool. It feels really nice. But I needed to make work that reminded me, like, no, when I go home and I'm with my family and I'm hanging out and we're just like going to the park, that's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. That there is so much going happen. Just at an anatomical, scientific level, us as creatures like in that space, there's just an infinite amount of things you can just zoom in on your finger and break down all the nerve. I'm saying, so from a technical level, there's so much going on. From a spiritual level, there's so much going on. From an interpersonal, there's so much. And I wanted to make work that helped me see my life that way. And it did help. Actually, it made me be in that space and kind of let go a little bit. Like, oh, I can't wait till that guy get to the studio. Or I can just be there. Like, oh, wait, this is what it is. But then when life is really hard, then it gets really hard because I'm in here digging deep about the hard things in life, and then I have to go face them still. So it's weird, but as artists, we always want to contribute something of unique value to that hasn't. And I don't think I'm doing anything unique visually. It's more of an attitude that I'm trying to kind of have maybe a unique perspective in the time that I'm in, where we're at. It's not even unique in the history of our existence, but it might be a little bit of a hiccup in the whole pursuit of what it means to live. So it's helped me in some way, but the other academic element to it was a whole crisis of masculinity. So the irony in my work from the past was that I'm painting myself in these vulnerable spots. There's me sleeping on the bed, my wife with her suit ready to go to work. There's me hunched over looking all weird. There's me, but I really am trying really hard to paint them. I'm trying to achieve this thing in painting as well at the same time. That can be a bit of a contradiction that I'm willing to live with at this point. Does that make sense? I'm still trying to make a powerful painting. There's still sort of like an ego there trying to make something, but then I'm painting. But then it contradicts itself with what the image is. So
yeah, man. I mean,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like making like a really amazing song about how you're not that amazing.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. No, absolutely. Well, no, I love that because it's like being able to be excellent at something, but talk about the vulnerability. You know what I mean? And show the vulnerability in an excellent way, which is like a weird thing because they don't mix. They don't make any sense. But I think the interesting part that you also are mentioning is that there's still an ego that exists while doing that. So it's cool because then your paintings have so much of humanity in it, so much of human elements to it, because it's the everyday battle of the reality of what we are and who we are, and then the other part of who we like,
what we want to be. Yeah. See, that's the thing. There is a sense of hyper authenticity that's been running through the art world right now. It's just be your complete self, right? And there's a quote in a movie where like this mom tells this guy, be yourself. Anyways, forget the movie, but he's just like, I don't want to be myself. And then he grabs a snow globe and he's like, oh, my snow globe's from like when he was a child, and he like hugs them all weird. And so but there's a hyper authenticity. But okay, in today's world, what achievement is there? Any type of achievement? It's almost like the ultimate achievement is what now is, hey, don't focus on achievements, because maybe that's the achievement is what's kind of beating you down, you chasing the achievement, right? But I love it when I get to surprise myself. Or being a painter can be something that you're just exploring and you fumble about into this amazing thing, or it can be this impossible vision that you're chasing for the rest of your life. I fall into the vision chasing, but I think it's a healthy balance to then have also the freedom to fumble about on your way there a little bit and surprise yourself on your way over there.
Yeah.
If you're too much on one side, if you're too focused on this vision, you're going to become maybe very rigid. You're never going to have accidents. And if you're too open, it could just be like an emotional mess. Yeah,
absolutely. Watching your journey has been really inspiring, even though I get glimpses, here and there. But then to even hear you talk about it is even more inspiring, because it's just the way that you communicate it visually is like a place that I think I constantly try to chase. And I don't really know what that looks like or means. And being able to clearly communicate in an excellent way your humanity.
Oh, okay.
And your authenticity, right? It's like what that means for me. When you're talking about what is achievement, what is our ultimate, like where do we fit and things like that, I sometimes lean more on, I'm a hyper achiever dude who wants to be the best that he can be in everything. But I'm also this person who is not willing to sacrifice my family and things that are important to me.
Which seems like contradictory, right?
Yeah. Which that's a constant struggle, because then you're like, well, then you have to reassess what is success and what does it mean to achieve certain things, because really is being a present good father, husband, an ultimate achievement.
Yeah. Well, it just made me think of this thing I've heard. The downside of humility is that nobody notices you. And to really care for others and kind of like what you're saying, being a good father, that means you're slightly vanishing so that others can emerge. So your time has been put away. So your preferences start to like disappear and things like that. And that is in direct contrast to sometimes the ambitious side of ourselves, where we want to completely emerge. And like, I think the artist's greatest fear is to disappear, just to not be noticed, not be talking about it. It's hard because you don't know. I don't even know how I would handle certain levels of success. Like, I don't know. Maybe bad. Maybe I'd be terrible. But
you seem to be doing pretty good.
Oh, man. So I think it's hard until you start to realize that like what is life itself that is a huge part of life, is serving others and your preferences aside for the benefit of someone else. You might never be congratulated for it or anything like that, but there's something really liberating to taking that cup finally. And I think bitterness comes, especially as an artist, when you refuse to take certain cups in life. And if you do it long enough, it'll kill the child in you completely, Surrender is another big theme in my work too. So real quick, I think I mentioned this at another point in our conversation, but I was trying to come up with paintings. Like before grad school, I was doing portraits of people and they were really tight. Renaissance. Yeah, I did a portrait of you. I think it's here.
You saw it, dude. I've been wanting to see the big one, bro.
It's here.
I've been.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's here. I'll show you. This is from 2012. It's like, I think it was the first portrait I did. The first ambitious portrait I ever did was you.
That's crazy, bro.
And I loved it. And I did more of that stuff too. And so when I went to grad school,
you're like, I want to make saints.
So it's like, okay, to get a little political, it's 2017. Trump's elected, the nation's being divided like crazy. I have all these friends that are like musicians, propaganda is not my friend, but I have these people that I know that are musicians, that they're using their craft to I was just painting some of the people that I knew that were making music that were for the betterment of their communities. Some of them were activists and some of them were just trying to engage the culture, and they were just doing these cool things. And I looked at them as like contemporary saints or whatever. So I went to grad school thinking I'm going to do something with figurative painting. I was thinking too much about subject matter that I wanted to put forth. And I wanted to do something that had to do with people doing those kind of things today that are the contemporary saints. It was too like I was trying to do something with my painting that was, once my daughter was born, there's no way I could do that. Like, I kept having to do all these like everyday things while I'm trying to present something with art or things. And so everyone who's an artist can tell you that's like not the way to make art. That's not how to follow your inclinations. It's more of a journey of discovery. I came to a point where I just had to surrender, where I just couldn't do anything. I can't make subject matter and this whole idea of like research-based work. I couldn't do that. My research was my life. Because honestly, I was trying to figure life out, and we're all kind of still trying to figure out life. So life in relationship to everything should be sort of like everyone's research, I think. So I surrendered to just embracing my immediate familiar things to become what I'm going to focus on in my art, but then also hopefully that, in life. I didn't say this, but one of my biggest fears when I knew this was the path I was going to is you always hear horror stories of like, the jerk artists that never around family, never just, and they might become great artists and stuff like that. They have a print on the wall over there that reminds me of one of the biggest fears I had when I became a painter was to become so self-absorbed. Yeah, I see that monster lurks in me, it's there. But I think finding a way to make work to keep that at bay was focusing on life, on my actual life. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you were talking about being not an overachiever, but just really achievement. That's life. It's like the tightrope of ambition, responsibility, love, and sacrifice. Or it sounds so cliche, but and then there's always been the stigma of being a parent, to be an artist, mother or father, whatever, because the assumption is that an artist should devote themselves to their work.
Exactly.
And that's cool. If you're a scientist, you can focus on your work, but there's got to be someone out there that's focusing on all of it and bringing it all in, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so a few things like, when you're talking about your art and you're talking about you still have this ego, right? That's like the thing that I'm wrestling with is like a false humility, right? And how false humility is still pride.
Oh, yeah,
you know, of like.
What's an example of like false humility?
Just basically kind of saying like, oh, I want to sacrifice and be here with my like family. You know what I mean?
With a smile on your face and your teeth clenching.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Of just like, that's what's really important to me. You know what I mean? I have to be lowly and like serve and like all this kind of thing, I think there's this everyday wrestle of, dude, I mean, I just think every day I'm like trying to relearn and rewire stuff. What I was taught, was that really what this means? Or is it through the lens of a lot of different things of privilege and pain and whatever else, you know what I mean? And so, sometimes it's like, well, what is true sacrifice, and it's kind of like, well, is it my dad who wanted to be an architect but didn't have money? He was a drafter and then ended up being a massage therapist and then never did art again, but was able to take care of our family and sing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, at one point do you look back and say, I could have still done this, and it's wrong that I didn't.
Yeah. And then so
that's tricky.
that also that kind of like that false humility of like, I did this,
I never got to do this, but hey, I love my family.
Exactly. And it's like, that's still that pride.
To me, I wonder, like, sometimes do I say certain things just to make myself feel better about the situation?
Sure. But then it's also kind of like, are we also kind of living in a society where we are entitled and privileged to be able to pursue all these things that we pursue? Does that make us bad for being able to do that? No. But at the same time, it's kind of like we have the luxury to deal with mental health because we have a space for it and we don't have to worry about all the other actual struggles of life. You know what I'm saying? When I think about all these different things, I'm like, I don't know, I'm constantly in my head. I'm just like, okay, if I sacrifice and love my family, what does that look like in this context?
Well, because it doesn't feel good sometimes when you're doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And then also it's like, and then, when you're single, it's so much easier because you got this gift from God and you're going to pursue it with all that you have.
Crush life.
You're going to get it.
14-hour
Yeah, exactly.
shifts.
Exactly.
I have some friends doing 14-hour shifts. I'm like, how? Yeah. I can't even do like 9. I'm like, whoo, I got to go home. I can't.
Every single time I go on a job, like I got to do the Super Bowl, this last one, and I was like camera utility, and it was for like the Super Bowl press conference, and then Rihanna when she came to talk on the press conference for Apple Music. So like I was like 10 feet away from her, you know what I mean? And it's just like, but every single person I asked who were cam ops or cam utilities who were like head of these things, I'm like, so like, are you married? Like, how's it going? Like stuff like that. They all have kids.
They all do?
They all have kids, but they're divorced.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So I'm asking the cam ops, they're like maybe 70 years old. They don't have families, you know what I mean? There's one person who was a DP. He did the Olympics since he was like in the 80s. He did the dream team, bro, like all this stuff, and I got to like chill and talk with him. It was super sick, and his family's intact. He's still good, and it was like one of the most encouraging.
Did you ask him like what was the secret?
I did. I tried to ask, but we just got so busy doing like filming and stuff that I didn't get a chance to like hear
see
more.
One of my favorite things is like there's certain painters I just want to call. They're like, hey, you don't know me, but how do you exist? Like, or how do you? I mean, it's hard. There's so many factors. I think some people would say that it's the machine, the capitalist machine, that makes it hard. But anyways, I interrupted you.
No, but well, and that's part of it, right? the society that we live in and what's contributing to the way we think and what we think we need to pursue in order to make it, and what making it means, and like all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I think like our culture really dictates a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, and how we see stuff. But with this DP, actually, when you asked me, he was actually like, yeah, you know, I tried to bring my family with me to, like, I think it was Italy or something. He was like, but I was just working the whole time and I barely got to see them anyways. So it just worked that I would just come home and I would just like be with them and stuff. But one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast is figure out just from other people how they're integrating different things into their life. You know, I think like a jack of all trades, Jill of all trades, whatever, you know, a master of none has always been this negative thing. And so for me, I wanted to redeem it and be like, okay, I want people to believe like, yo, you're a master of integration. When it comes to family life, when we're talking about this is the part that interests me the most. How does one pursue at a high level, get absorbed by the art, but still be just as present and just as absorbed into their family? And I'm not gonna lie, when I think about your work, I think you do it really well.
There's tension. I try to depict the tension, but no one ever sees it. People see me, oh, your paintings are just so full of joy. They're so full of joy every time. And I'm always thinking like, are they seeing the paintings, man? I just want someone to analyze them and be like, don't you see the demons? Just see the demons inside? They're lurking all around. That's why I'm never looking at the viewer. I can't look at you. And I'm just kidding. I can't look at you. But that's the trick, because I don't want to just hold it all together so it doesn't all fall. And the work does have a sense of, one of the directors of my gallery, I think he called it everything on the precipice of total anarchy. So you're just, and that's what sometimes it feels like when you're trying to be an ambitious creative and you're also really caring about your family and stuff, or you're caring about the relationships. You're like, it can feel like all you're doing is just trying to like hold both ships from sinking. And if you let go of one, it starts to sink, and you let go of the other, it starts to sink. So I don't know the answer yet, but for me, it's helped. Like I said before, it's helped me to make the subject matter, the imagistic representation of my work be my familiar stuff. And then I play with paint and I play with the concept of painting and art, but it does keep me thinking about like life and stuff. Or you can become a little more rigid and calculated like a, you know, get the calendar out, date night on Wednesday. Well, we'll move that over to Friday, sexier. Or like, you know, Sundays our family get together, Tuesdays baseball, and like you just do that, but then you can become a robot that way. So that's why maybe, yeah, that's what it is. It's like an art form in and of itself to structure your life in a way where you are able to like devote to the relationships around you. There's been artists that neglected relationships and became known, and they'll stay with us forever. And there's others that didn't do that. We'll never know. And that's the thing, is like there's that whole thing, you being forgotten, being remembered, how to be remembered, you know, and true humility, you won't be remembered, you won't go noticed. But I mean, that's when then it kicks in. Well, what do you believe about ultimate reality? Do you believe there's a God or not? Do you believe you have a heavenly Father, an audience of one? Yeah. Then we get into conversations about like, you know, the origins of morality and why we do what we do. Is it survival or is it something more transcendent? What's going on? Yeah. And so these questions can go into that territory, but because we're talking about being truly like present and then really doing good work, it almost seems like history has taught us that like that's impossible. I've also heard that you just don't hear of the ones that are able to do it. You just don't hear those stories.
Yeah, because they're engrossed in both, and they care about, you know what I mean? I feel like they've come to the place what you're talking about of like surrender. You know what I mean? Of like that, holding the cups and like, and it's just like, and so they don't care. You come to a point. I feel like when you reach this place of like contentment, is this place when you don't need to be remembered.
Yeah, you don't
remembered by the people you care about.
You don't need to. Yeah, what keeps you alive no longer comes from having cultural relevance.
Yeah,
or being remembered as such and such. These are deep concepts, man. Because especially, there's so many. We can get into a lot of different ways. But for me, as a painter, that's being a creative of any kind, you're always going to be dancing around the possibility of becoming cynical or bitter. So you have a vision, you know, you have a dream, you've been told your whole life you can be anything you want. You try hard, you focus on one thing, and that one thing, the one thing you chose, the one thing you thought you were good at. Imagine if like your whole life you can be anything you want. You just put your time into it. Just keep going at it. And you do that, right? You don't care about anything else. You sacrifice so many other things, and it doesn't work out for you.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like, that's just like a
I feel like that happens all the
recipe
time.
for bitterness. And then what is life like after that? Everything is like, oh, they just knew who they knew. Oh, it's just, that's a hard way to live, man. And I feel like any creative is dancing in that territory. And so how do you get to that place where you're away from that and become more like a child, and you're more grateful and more, that's the trick. It's hard to do that once you feel like the world is fake. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things about our time. I was talking to this guy he's a theory guy. He's a big writer and stuff. And he was talking about, we're at the place in the world now where everyone knows, like the young generation, everyone knows everything is BS. Everything's BS. Anything you might say, there's hitting under any political structure, there's a power struggle going on. So everything is fake. Everything's a farce. And how in the world do you get from there to being able to engage in the world and actively play like a child? Like, because you learn to be that way. So yeah, that's a big question. But for me, being around children and seeing them, it's almost like it's kind of sad, like, oh man, one day they're going to be like, yeah, forget all that.
Yeah.
And that's...
No, seriously.
Surrender is also like an idea of letting go too, And I don't know if you've noticed this, but have you ever been in a tense situation where you're thinking about what you have to do in your life, but then you're also around people
all the time
and kids? Have you ever felt that moment where you just kind of like, for that moment, you say, I'm just going to not think about it. You let go and you like pick up a kid and you run around with them, and like, and you see what happens to them?
Yeah.
They light up. Their world explodes.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, like all you did was put yourself in the closet. You just get out of here.
Yeah.
And your whole ambitions, it goes away, and then their faces light up. Like, I see it on my dog all the time.
Yeah.
And
so true.
And every second you're not like that, they're being deprived of this, like, the letting go. But it doesn't it feel good too at the time? Like, almost like, why? Yeah. And then sometimes you snap back into that, what you got to do.
Yeah.
What I got to do, what I got to get done.
I feel like that's like every single day. I mean, I can, just even yesterday, even today, I can think of every specific moment when that happened. Because
how's your boy?
He's 2.
So yeah, he's
bro.
He sees it, right? He knows it, right?
Yeah. I mean, he knows when I'm like actively engaged, because he'll constantly be like, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy," you know what I mean? And like dancing, or he'll always have certain phrases. And there's so many, like, I think I've dealt with a lot of guilt and stuff, but I just
don't even get me started on guilt.
Right. But it's just kind of like I always have to actively be like, oh, I have a list of things in my head. And it's so crazy because I never realized fully how much I'm not present in moments.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll be thinking so hard, and then I'm like, wait, what just happened right now? What did he just do? What is my kid doing? Like, what?
He just took his first step.
Yeah,
Alex.
No, but like, seriously, it's just kind of like, how did I space out like that? Like, how did I just do that? And I hate that. And it's crazy how intentional you have to stop, and you have to be like, okay, all right, look, that's going to come back. It'll be good. My kid's not going to be like this forever. Like, I have to enjoy this right now.
Yeah.
And like, this is really what I really love, because ultimately all the stuff that I do is like, so that I can come home to this guy and be with him.
It's almost like, if you care about craft and your profession or whatever it is you do, because it's good to care about those things, right? But then you just equally care about family, then welcome to the art of life. Are you going to make a good painting, or is it going to be a terrible painting?
Well, yeah. So for me, when I'm processing through these conversations that we've been having, and just like this idea of how like art is anything that connects us to another person, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think this is why I'm trying to make it my mantra, and why I keep on trying to change the way I think about it, because then it becomes more of, what am I doing right now that's going to bring me closer to the people that I love, right? And like, in this instance, like, if it's me disengaging with what I need to do in order to be closer to my son and hold them, like, that alone is an art form, because I'm able to like connect with him.
That's a move. You just made a move.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, then I think about dancing, they always make this analogy of like, when it comes to emotions, you got to dance with your emotions. You got to dance with your partner. When it comes to like fighting or whatever else, you have to maneuver through life together. And sometimes you lead and sometimes they lead, and sometimes you get angry, and then you got to figure out how to get back to happiness and joy, you know, and then just thinking about that as an art form of like how you have to intricately think about.
There's always dissonance in beauty, right?
Yeah. If I can see myself as an artist constantly, but not as an artist directed to an art form, but an artist is life, and connecting to another people, if that becomes like, again, like I go back to what.
Maybe what's hard about this is because when we're thinking of a craft and being in a studio, maybe we're not thinking of an audience, but we're like, hey, we're gonna show this.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you have a pure intentions like, I just want to show this to the world, and or maybe you're like in the I'll show them, or maybe I'm coming for you and you, or whatever your motivation is.
Whatever, yeah.
There's an audience, but what's the audience in this art of life? Is it just the people around you, or
that's good? I mean, I think
if it's just them, what if they're not giving anything back to you? Because true love is sometimes you don't get anything back.
Absolutely.
You're sacrificing, and then your kid just like leaves you.
I'll be honest. I think,
I'll
be honest. I think for me, when you ask me that question, I think the audience is me.
Okay.
I think it keeps my sanity. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, if I can direct this energy and this passion towards this art form, and seeing that this art form will make all my other art forms better, then like maybe I can be more present in a moment, and maybe like I will work so hard to be present, because then I know that my lyric or my video or whatever will exude that moment better, because I was able to be more present. I saw something better in my child, and I connected in a deeper level. So now I can bring that and connect to other people better.
Yeah, connection, dude. That's a beautiful thing. The great art connects people together. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. If you care, you have to be intentional. You have to fight. Just like if you care for your art form, you have to be intentional. You don't. But then how to bring the craft that you're working on, also do that between people, right? I always thought of, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but I just want to say it, because if I don't,
do it.
if I try to say some other time, it'll be weird. Okay. But I started thinking of, I'm not the only one that thinks this. I was surprised to hear another painter talk about this, and it just blew my mind. I was so happy that I wasn't the only one that thought of this. And I was thinking, what if paintings are sort of like, give off an essence like a person? And let's say you walk into a gallery, just like what David Sally was saying, qualities in the painting, so also qualities in painting. You walk into a gallery, it's a group show, it's a bunch of different paintings. One painting, and pretend those paintings are actually people. Phew, they just turn into a person. They're just hanging out. You walk up to one person, you start having a conversation with them, and the first thing they do is just tell them, hey, are you aware of what's happening in Indonesia right now? And you're like, no, I'm not. Well, let me tell you. You should be concerned. You're like, whoa, okay, yeah, thank you. And then you walk up, you're like, Indonesia, that's crazy. I can't even fathom that. I can't believe it. You walk up to another person, hey, let me tell you about, you have all these conversations.
Cool. Yeah.
And most of them seem to kind of try to educate you about something. And then you walk up to some person and you just talk about life and like what you did on Friday, or like, what do you think about this root beer? Yeah, I think it's gross. Like, it sounds cheesy. But you had this moment of connection, and your guard was down. And I was thinking, I want my paintings to kind of function that way. They can look as long as I have this weird goal, like that's the goal. I don't even know what that looks like. I wish that would be so cool to be able to achieve that with all different types of paintings. And like, I think that connection, isn't the main thing we want in life is just to know that we're not alone, that we're cared for, and that someone sees us. And we're seen for who we are, like completely naked and loved anyway. I think, and just coming across other art forms that acknowledge that, like, yeah, we do want that. I want that too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we all want this, and we all chant together, we all want this. Even if we don't get it, like that's knowing that that's maybe one of the things we want can be pretty powerful. And humor comes into that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely.
But none of that counts if I achieve all that and then I go home and there's no connection there too. So
absolutely,
that's why the statement, I mean, we're in a different culture, but 50 years ago there was this, remember the behind every great man, I'll say person now.
Yeah.
I'll say person now. Behind every great person is their partner rolling their eyes. Sure. It used to be behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes.
Oh, okay.
But we know why they're rolling their eyes. The closest to you, we know why they're rolling their eyes, because they know. They know because it presents itself as the only thing that the world has seen. They know the actual self. They know when you ate that burrito and then you had to run to the bathroom. With that comedian, he has this really amazing bit about going number 2 to the bathroom, going poop. Like, it sounds silly, but he has this really good bit about how profound that is. He's talking about, it doesn't matter who you are, when you're sitting at that toilet doing that thing, it's pretty much like you're humbled. You're just like everyone else. We need people like that to kind of trip up the Met Gala to give us all that. That's the connection, because it doesn't matter where we are in human history. No one likes to be embarrassed in front of others. No one likes these certain quirks, so they're little reminders of connections, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also makes me just feel better about myself when I mess up. Hey, this is my work. You don't think I'm cool? That's fine. Oh, and the coolness is a whole nother thing. What does it mean to be cool? And I remember when one of my directors was looking at my work for the first time. He was looking at all the works that were going to be in the show, and he takes this big long pause and he's looking at them. I have no idea what he's going to say, and he just says, "They're aggressively uncool." And I thought, I'll take it. Aggressively uncool, just uncool, but very just on purpose uncool. So, and then I just realized, what? I just never could be that cool in that way. I don't know how we got to coolness from connection, but maybe because that pursuit of cool makes you so you can't connect. It's like this unattainable to be on the cover of like Vogue. Can you really approach that person?
Yeah,
like
for sure. It's like our ultimate what we want to attain is to be
flawless.
Disconnected. Is to be disconnected from people. It's like really interesting.
Wait, what do you mean? Can you explain it?
Well, it's like not this intentional thing, right? But to be on magazines, to be known or whatever, is actually to be the most disconnected you are from people. You know what I mean? So the things that I always try to think about is like, what's the behind the scenes of why we think about where we want to be, or why culture pushes us to certain things, and just take us further away from each other. You know what I mean? And so if that's, I'm just more of like a conspiracy kind of like thought, but it's more of like, well, if what we were made for was relationship, and what we all try to attain is to get rid of relationship to then like reach this
for the stars.
But then that's going to leave us so alone and by ourselves, because no one's going to understand us. Sure, people connect with our art or whatever else, but you know what I mean, where no one's going to get it. You know what I mean? And so we're on this pursuit of something that really is just going to disconnect us more.
It's tricky because it's almost like, okay, one of my good friends and mentors, Anne Schutte, I'll say her name. She was married to the painter Jerry Schutte from ASU. She's like, if you see the Mona Lisa floating down a river and a drowning kid, which one would you go get? I was a art teacher at one point. Some of my students were like, well, the Mona Lisa. And I was like, whoa, okay. It goes to say that, okay, so because of history and so much culture, that's all going to die. And I think the reason why people sacrifice relationships is because, okay, there is something to be said about one thing about this is that without art, what do we live for, right? So who was it? I'm saying all these things that have like untraceable fact checking, but my brain, I have bad memory problems. So I did hear, I think they were trying to, during World War II, they were trying to cut funds to the visual arts, to the arts during World War II. And what's his name? Churchill.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
He said, if we cut funding to the arts, then what are we trying to save the world for? So what's the point, what music are we going to listen to? And during times of turmoil, there's always going to be someone painting flowers to remind us, this is why we're fighting for this. So that's probably a different conversation, but I think that's why sometimes art making and the pursuit of the creative life is so elevated, because that's what gives our life meaning and purpose, and that's what it is, the beauty. But what we're talking about here is that actually is possible to some extent without any of the visual rewards and all that stuff. If there's no relationships to appreciate that, then what do those things matter, right? So it could, I think what's not as a conspiracy thing, those ideas can mess up the aspiring artist into thinking that other things aren't of value. And as you're inspiring to be an artist because you think this is very special and important and it's going to be... And I know that most artists, it's for themselves. I've always been interested in it. This is what but deep inside, there's also like, this is what makes me matter, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. And sometimes we miss the people to our periphery on our way there. And then when we look back, they're so far away. that it takes a big humbling step to make that phone call. How have you been?
Yeah.
I need you.
No, for sure.
But I think the periphery has been another theme in my life too. The idea of the periphery, things that you see, but you're not focused on them, but they're always there.
That's really good.
And so,
okay, so this is just more of a process side note kind of thing to go on with this kind of conspiracy thing. Okay, not really a conspiracy, but we're just using this word.
I got you. Okay.
But so what I try to reflect on a lot is like the way the Bible and the church has communicated specific things, right? We were talking about humility earlier, right?
Okay.
And we were talking about how humility is like, if you're truly like humble, you're not known, kind of thing.
Yeah, like
right?
downside is that
Right.
you won't be applauded for humility if you're really.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Maybe you will. But
No, sure. But more commonly so, right? Since, I don't know, 2008, some of my things that I approach art is, like music specifically, being more of like a faith-based person, right? It's like, how has evil or like the devil stolen certain things from like people? And
stolen like certain things, like you mean like gifts, like talents, or what do you mean?
Yeah. So for example, like the history of like stained glass in churches, you know, and just like whitewashing of churches, right? Of like just completely turning, like painting everything white so they're not distractions. You know what I mean? And just how like art from then, that's how it's influenced a lot of how our churches are built and things like that. You know what I mean? That's so heartbreaking when that used to be the main thing of how people experience church.
Yeah, right. Because the architecture was part of the
experience. Of like how you connect with God.
There's theological ideas underneath the geometry of just everything you're doing, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, and also I think the time the people spoke different languages, so they couldn't understand what in that language whoever was reading the Bible. So part of it
like Latin.
So part of it is that they could experience the presence and experience God through the art, right? And through the things that like the paintings that were on the ceilings or stained glass. And so when I think about all those kind of things, and when we were making music early on, you know, people were always like, the Christian music started being a thing, you know, the like Dove Awards and stuff like that. And it was like, you know, if you say God enough or Jesus enough, then you can be on the radio for Christian radio, and then you have a specific market. You know what I mean? And that was always a thing.
What is that called? Industrial. There's a complex for that, the evangelical industrial complex.
I'm not sure.
It's just like the military industrial complex, but it's like the evangelical industrial complex, or something like that, where there develops a whole nother criteria for any creative that is of faith to like make it.
Exactly. Which for me, I was like, I'm not going to say God this many times just because, you know, I want to be profitable or I want to have a new market. Like, that's just dumb. That steals creativity. So to me, I felt like, this is the way I saw it, was like, I felt like the devil was like, yo, stealing creativity from artists by using God's name to be able to fit into another mold while not being able to fully be authentic. Because you're just like, oh, I'm gonna say God enough, and then I'll be able to hit a certain.
And anyone can do that.
Anyone can do that, exactly. Yeah. And so then it steals the art away, and it's crazy to me. Where I was like, man, literally using God's name in order to steal creativity was blowing my mind, right? So, anyways, fast forward to this conversation now, and I'm thinking like, okay, humility and stuff like that. Granted, this challenges a lot of different things in my head. So
go for it. This is the juice of
for sure.
This is where it gets.
But what I'm thinking about is, you know, we talk about humility, and a lot of times, you know, when we look at art as a whole, you know, you hardly hear about. This is my context. That doesn't mean it's true. But
I'm laughing real quick. I'm laughing at how many times we're prefacing everything we're saying. Okay, this is gonna sound really cliche. Real quick, conspiracy. Yeah, but it's just in my head. Hold on.
So make sure everyone knows.
I'm not crazy. I'm not one of those, whoever you think they are.
Whatever that is. But when I think about humility, and the person who is the most humble is the person we all most know.
Are you talking about Jesus?
Yeah.
Oh.
Right?
No, yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of the gospel story, right? That the king of the universe, the one who fashioned all molecules, stepped down, served others, washed his disciples' feet, in his context, brought women into his circle, did all these things, and then ultimately was humiliated, laughed at, and crucified. And people always forget about the humiliation part of the mockery, and being placed where he was placed at that hill, where people would enter in and say, "Oh, look at this guy." And I think most paintings of the cross is there that you don't see a lot of laughing and scorn and stuff. Anyways, yes, that story depicts the most humble person ever to ever walk the face of the earth.
And so my challenge in my brain in this conversation is like another kind of way that I think is stolen, right? Is like I don't see many artists.
Oh, I think I know where you're going. Okay.
I don't see many artists, directors, painters, whatever, who are faith-based, love Jesus, right? That are well known, that are doing excellent work. Because why? Because they're supposed to love their family, be humble about it, and not be known. So then what? That's another way that the enemy steals the place where he shines. Granted, I'm not even gonna preface, but I guess that's kind of like my challenging thought in this conversation.
Right.
I was
Why
like,
is that, right?
why is that, right? I mean, sure, there's
Because there's successful people that do love their families and like they didn't sacrifice. That's not the default.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think for me, my default. So what I'm saying is, I think the ways that Christianity has presented specific things, right? Like, so I think about the Philippines. Okay, I think about how the Spaniards came, colonized, and then used Catholicism to control the way that
almost like the external control the external things in life.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's what I'm trying to say is like in evangelical and the Christian faith here in the West, there's multiple facets, right? Of like, oh, you gotta be rich and famous. There's like that thing of prosperity crap, whatever. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but whatever. And then, but then there's this other side of like this false humility of like, give up all these things, die to yourself, and follow this other path, and you're not known. You know what I mean?
And we've been talking about the tension of having that, but not letting go of either, right? Okay.
Yeah. And so then it's like, well, you know, because I always challenge in my head, like, why can we have both? Can
I just have both?
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And not in the sense of like, and that's kind of why I came to the Jack of all trades, master of integration, because it's like, why am I a Jack of all trades but a master of none? No, that can't be true. There has to be something that we.
If there's only one thing we should be a master of, is just the whole balance of life in general.
Yeah.
You know.
And so I guess like if we're truly humble, then we can be truly bold. Then we can truly be X, Y, and Z. You know what I'm saying? So I guess the new layer for me in this conversation is like, then what is humility? What is true humility? And then how do we put that into our art in our daily life and integrate that and those things into it? You know what I'm saying? Because
I think it's learning to be a child again, like learning to. Oh man, because kids know their limitation. They're humble in a certain way, but they're so bold. They're crazy. They do stuff and they ask for everything and anything. Is that kind of what you're trying to get at? Like how? Because they're kind of by nature humble in a way. Like they in the sense that when they need help, they ask for it. They don't think twice. Yeah. And say, no, I'm not going to ask, even though my hand is caught in this. I don't know. I'm in a situation, but I'm not going to ask for help, or I'm not going to. Is that what you're talking about? Or?
Well, I guess I'm like that and thinking about ways things have been stolen and good things used for bad, like good things used for evil kind of thing. And just like,
you're trying to do this?
Yeah. And so I'm trying to think
so you're not focusing on your family then, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And then you like totally lose sight of like that. No, it's not like one or the other. It's always this one or the other. You know, it's not a both and you know what I'm saying? And so when I think about like humility, when I think about, but you can't be humble and be known. You know what I'm saying? That's like kind of like a common theme.
Well, okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like kind of what we were talking about earlier, like the idea of one of the downsides of humility is that nobody notices you. I guess that is a good point, because I mean, everyone notices Jesus, and he was the most humble. So maybe that is like not a complete picture of what humility actually is. It doesn't mean you disappear necessarily, but maybe what disappears is your need for, maybe people will notice you, but what will disappear is your urge to be noticed. That's not what's driving you anymore. So you're kind of disappearing in the sense that you're not, maybe what's disappearing in you is your desire to emerge constantly for the sake of that being what validates you, right? So you disappear, and that's what disappears. And it doesn't mean no one will notice you, but it could be that like, it could be that in certain moments you don't get the part, or you don't get this and that and whatever, but maybe that's a more helpful way to look at it. But yeah, I've always struggled with that because I come from those circles too, and it's like it always like by default looks selfish to do anything that's creative, And I think it's because the extreme opposite, the slippery slope, could be that you become this self-absorbed person that's chasing recognition, and I don't even know who you are anymore.
Which is super judgmental. It's like, but that's the thing that's like hard for me. It's like, how do I allow those things to also define so much of my life?
What things exactly?
Just like those thought processes, those mentalities, right?
Of becoming.
Yeah, or like what you're describing, this fear. It's like fear driven of like, oh, you're gonna be self-absorbed. You're gonna be this airhead kind of person. You're gonna lose yourself, and if you kind of thing. And it's just like I let all that kind of stuff drive me to prevent me to pursue certain things. You know what I mean? Like for me personally.
Oh, so you said you put the pause button on things because
of the fear of becoming something else more.
That's funny because that is what haunted me when I started this. But I had that painting up the whole time just to remind myself, like, look, it can go there because it really can.
Yeah.
You can start looking at yourself in certain ways, and that's why celebrities are just unapproachable sometimes, or maybe they don't allow themselves to be that way, or it's always the celebrities we love the most in pop culture are the ones that like just seem to be so they just walked into the grocery store and they said hi and they smiled and it was great. And you're like, what did they do that was like so crazy? Oh, they weren't like above us floating, or you can't pretend that that's not floating around there, that's not a potential place. But I think like if you care about that won't really be an issue. I think it's if you're completely blinded to it and if you don't even realize why you're doing what you're doing. Like, do you really care about just being obsessed with this craft and just trying to figure it out? Or is this a way to get at everyone who made fun of you when you were in third grade? Sure. I'll show all of them. There's so mmany cliches in movies of the I'll show you, I'll get at them. All the haters will know, they'll finally respect me. And they never don't. You show up, like when it's like holiday time from like, I don't know, you're imagining LA, you go home and then you still get the knucklehead like, from your brothers. But I can see why a lot of people can build resentment towards just Christianity in general or just church culture, because they do tend to generally like deprive. It just seems weird, like if you're a creative in those circles and there's something like already like potentially going to be bad about you and stuff.
It's like, man, if we gave more of that childlike freedom, and like I feel like that's kind of the part of where we, like you were talking about earlier, learning the skepticism and the cynicism, you know what I mean? If there was more freedom to be a child, to explore and become versus already instilling fear.
What's like that the kids want to do more than anything else all the time, constantly? Is play, right?
Yeah.
They just want to play. What does that even, like, what does play even mean? What is that?
Yeah.
What are you accomplishing? You're really not accomplishing anything. You're just imagining things. You're hanging out with a kid. You're running around. You're racing. You're getting toys and pretend you're building this little world. You're hide and seek. What is even hide and seek? Let's see if I can find you. Where are you hiding? Like, it's ridiculous.
No, it's so funny because my son, when he plays hide and seek, he knows I know where he is. He knows that he's not really actually hiding. You know what I mean? He just likes this, and he just laughs hysterically when like I'm literally like my hands in there, like, where are you? Where are you? And he's just giggling, and he knows I know where he is, but it's just like
he just knows you're there interacting with him. Like the peekaboo is ridiculous.
Yeah,
like, come on.
I know.
I'm like, it's just my hand covering my face. Come on, peekaboo. How is this blowing your mind right now?
Yeah.
But people have always said this: the most important things in life are the things invisible to the eye, and play is one of the essential characteristics of like kids, and a lot of creativity comes from that without like necessarily. So I think creativity maybe has been tied too much with fame.
Yeah.
That wasn't always the case. Like even like the famous painter Eric Fischl has talked about this before, about how being in the art world, like being famous as an artist and being rich wasn't always the thing. They weren't always hand in hand, and now they're like together, So you can be a really creative person, but nowadays we don't want to stop there. We want to be creative and we want to be respected.
Yeah.
And known for that. And maybe that's where it gets kind of twisted, and you have to like really kind of, I feel like that's when you just know yourself. Just be honest with yourself. There's times where my motivations might be kind of skewed, But then sometimes I can use that as fuel, and I look back and like, it worked.
Yeah.
And people always say when you get angry, use that fuel. And then the question is, if that is a fuel for what you make, are you really making beautiful things? And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you really are, and maybe do the ends justify the means? Does a great art justify what mentally you used to get there? Or who cares if you were in a beautiful headspace this whole time and you made everything you made because of the love you have for everything that you're doing, and the work doesn't matter. It's just like, oh, it doesn't work. Does the inverse work? You know, where it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, but what you did to get there was you sacrificed everyone else. You're a total, I mean, and we have examples of that, of like artists that have maybe proven that can happen. And the question is, where do we fit in that scale? It's crazy to
that's interesting.
But I've wrestled with, I mean, also practically families tend to kind of do that too. You know, oh, you're doing what? Oh, have you tried? You know how many times my dad tried to get me to do taxes?
Oh my gosh.
He's like, you should do taxes. Your uncle over there, he's got a yacht and he just does taxes. He's been doing taxes for a long time. Hey, I think at one point maybe I might have to look, you know, the whole starving artist thing kicks in. Like, oh, Dad. But it gets pretty messed up when it's sort of like, you know, faith community making it the pursuit itself.
Yeah.
Like just bad. But if without that kind of mentality, we'd have like no achievements like medicine and anything like that, or the atomic bomb. Atomic bomb, or the Mona Lisa, or Sistine Chapel, or that's a big gray area. So to me, when you said false humility, I thought it meant like just like something to say to make yourself feel better for not doing anything.
Yeah.
No, my family. But it's like, I guess it's just important to find a way to like move forward and exist in life without having the possibility to become cynical. And I think the cynicism just comes in when you feel it owed to yourself to reach a certain destination. The whole destination mindset is sort of like, and the journey mindset is more of like the less cynical, the playful, right?
Yeah.
But that can be looked at as like an evil if it's, I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what you said about the history part of like, you know, it was easier back then because it wasn't like creativity wasn't tied to being rich and famous kind of thing. Well,
not easier, but it's like you might have been a great artist and not a lot of people know about you. Just those in the art world, the connoisseurs know who you are, and the artists in your community know who you are.
Well, I'm curious if the mentalities that are shaped now versus then and in the creation of the art, right? Is it the same or was it different? I have no idea. But like when you were creating and painting then without the same possibilities as we have now, does that change like the authenticity of the art in which you're making? Because it was more so of like you had this freedom and playfulness to just do whatever without being judged or without it having to make it somewhere.
You're talking about like early on when I was making paintings?
Oh, no, I'm talking about just like like, you know what I mean? Like,
you know, I kind of take that back a little bit because I think we all want to be respected in whatever group that is, no matter how big that group is. But I think now,
I guess like, more global scale where everyone examines your
social
art.
media.
Like it changes the way art is made because then it's always for someone. It's always for someone to judge in your circle in a wider, you know, in a way, which
maybe the audience has been more in the consciousness of painters now more than ever, because as soon as you're done with the painting, you post it and then it just goes around and so many people just see the painting on a screen. But before you had to go, and not everyone's going to see it in person. Maybe that's why you required so much more of the physical painting than just the imagistic quality of it. Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm just curious, like if, like even music wise, like if written without, without pressure, you know what I mean, for it to become something or whatever. If it was more, if there was more of that childlike playfulness, and so now it becomes more so of like an ability to have a mentality, a discipline to go back into a free mentality within the confines of like what we're living in. You know what I mean?
Like how to find a way to get back to that state of just kind of getting lost in the work. The whole getting...
Yeah.
Remember in The Office where like Michael has all these lists of excuses that he tells Pam to tell the clients if they call. She's reading them off. They're all ridiculous. And one was like, I'm lost in the painting. Oh, no.
That's amazing.
I'm lost. Oh, he can't talk. He's lost in the painting. But I think the answer for me and for a lot of artist friends that I know has always been, the answer is really getting obsessed with the work, getting engaged with it. Like, get into it here and forget everything else. It's all about turning everything else off. You can turn it on later, but if you have it on too long, it might creep in here and you might make paintings for that. And then it just gets all twisted in your head and you're not sure why you're making what you're doing. But and then we're in the unprecedented time now with like instant fame culture. And you can be famous for anything. And there's always been different types of artists in each generation. There's always like the Vogue artists. Like I feel like even Leonardo da Vinci was the more fine dress, more, you know. And then there's like rugged old Michelangelo full of dust and like rock star. And so I think every generation has the magazine cover really like just amazing, beautiful. And then you have that rugged. I think there's a reason why there's different types of creatives that kind of get remembered over. And there's always like the same types. I'm not saying I'm going to be remembered, but I'm really interested in how certain artists were able to kind of stay remembered, even though they weren't at the height of the intellectual conversation. There, you can kind of bypass that by really just touching on the special things within the larger community. And some people that say it's like maybe it's like getting too relatable on things, but there's a way to do it that doesn't like sacrifice like the mental exercises you take on philosophy, just what you're thinking about in your work. So I'm not a huge fan of like Norman Rockwell, but it's interesting. I think it's amazing that he, it's cool that he kind of, we all remember who he is. And some other painters from history, like the pre-Raphaelites, I'm not a fan of their work necessarily, but I'm interested in how they're still remembered, you know. And maybe this is a whole another conversation, but there's always the painters in society that are still trying to connect with people and the human experience in a tangible way, like up front, and not always in an analogy or like the work kind of takes you back into how you see your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, for sure.
But we didn't get a solution though with the church culture, the false humility thing, because that is pretty odd to like overcome that. But at the same time though, there's one avenue that it works well in, and it's writing books.
What exactly?
I feel like church culture, it's in writing. The ambition of creative pursuit is usually in writing books, and it's all kinds.
That stuff is weird too, though.
It is. It's like, but it's, you know, as everyone's trying to, you know, kind of leave their mark. But I think that's the one place where you're not going to get much scrutiny because, hey, you're a pastor, a preacher, you have this deal, and you want a new perspective on something, and you write your book, and it's like you don't get as much scrutiny there than if you pursue like a music or something like that. It's been in church culture, it's kind of died down a little bit. I think there's been an explosion of like, hey, actually, you know, hey, we got to support our creatives. I think there's a lot more work to kind of get people to really free up.
I mean, yeah. Well, I think, you know, the other side of it, it's kind of like back to that, like living in a capitalist society and whatever, you know, the luxury of being able to be someone or whatever, you know what I mean? It's kind of like this weird to be able to have conversations about false humility and having conversations about, you know, like becoming something. It's also like a funny conversation to have. It's like when you think about following Jesus, it's just such a Western thing to be like, let me do this to become this and achieve this. And
wait, what do you mean? I'm confused. Like following Jesus to become famous? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Oh,
it's like
okay.
They're also two like different sides of the like two extremes, opposite sides. You know what I mean? To have a conversation about to be humble, to love others, to serve others, you know what I mean? While simultaneously like
get a book deal.
What's that?
You get a book deal or something?
Yeah. Or like simultaneously talk about like how do you make it big in music and how do you make it big as an artist? You know what I mean? Or like how do you know what I mean? It's just like a funny it's like a funny thing. In some way I'll argue, well,
wait, are you saying it's funny because we ignore the pursuit of being a well-known author?
Sorry, so this is the contradiction. This is a contradiction, right?
Okay.
Of everything that we talked about. I just think that this is me challenging another part of who I am, which is right,
the pursuing
the capitalist American part of me, right? And in the way that Jesus may have been presented in my context, right? It's like this weird, as you would like tightrope, as you would call it. It's like what we initially talked about of like to love and serve others who are oppressed, like the orphans, the widows.
Yeah.
If that is the way to really live life, you know, to love others, yet the pursuit of art
Yeah.
in this world is kind of like very opposite. Not saying that these things can't do that, but like my daily struggle is like, how do I take thousands of dollars of equipment and like, how does this serve those people? You know what I'm saying? And like my success in that, how does it serve them? Sure, make it, I can tell other people's stories, I can make all this money, I can give back, or you know what I'm saying? But it's just also kind of funny. It's kind of like, we have to do this in order to survive in America. You know what I mean? Whereas like, you know, you go to another country, their problems are very different. It's just a weird thing. It's like a weird thing of to be a Christian in America and then not think that...
Oh, to be a Christian in America can mean like 25 different things.
Exactly. And that's why I hate even saying that term. But you know what I mean? It's like, I guess I'm going back to maybe trying to ground myself.
Well, we want to be at peace with like how we're leading our lives. We want to feel like I'm not neglecting something that's really important, blind spot.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so like, then it goes back to originally, like, what is meaning to us in life and things like that. I try to ground myself every day. This is a luxury and a privilege for me to be able to do what I do and pursue these kind of things. You know what I mean?
I had this idea sometimes if you kind of throw in the 1% in it, we're just peasants anyway. Doesn't matter.
No, for sure.
I'm just a man with a brush. Like, I'm right there with everybody. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, because there's just so much wealth out there, and Instagram has showed me like, whoa, there's a lot of people with a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely.
And anyways, but it doesn't take away that like my lifestyle is very, very comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Very comfortable.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like, ultimately, people would love to be in our situations. You know what I mean? And
yet we want to be in a different
Yeah.
situation.
And it's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just personally want to constantly try to acknowledge those things for myself to stay thankful.
Oh, okay. Like, I see what you're saying.
And have gratitude for stuff. And also like call myself out and be like, bro, what are you doing for one? Two, how are you serving others in what you're doing? And three, how do I continue to keep this mentality of what I believe is most core in my life is to serve and care for others, you know? Like, how am I doing that daily? This is just me more so like, I'm so busy with how do I make it? Not make it because I want to be famous, but make it so I can make sure my family's good.
Oh, I'm in the same. Yeah. The thing is, sometimes it's like, I just want to be able to know that I'm going to be able to do this long term and they're going to be okay. Initially, it was like, I just want to do this, period. And then it turned into, I want to do this and like be able to supplement. And now it's like, I want to be able to do this and kind of be able to take care of the family long term. But each one of those stages changes the way you look at your craft.
Yeah.
There's so much there too. And that's why right now in the contemporary art world, for the most part, it's easier for everybody, for the artists and for the gallery, for the collective, for everyone involved, for your work to be a little bit more efficient. That's not everybody. There's a lot of work out there that's like really heavyweight. It takes a lot of time to make, but to kind of get things going, it's kind of easier to, I mean, if you can paint really fast and make something really fast and have a common motif within it, a color scheme that works, and it's slightly skewed from what everyone else is doing, so you have your own little flavor to it, you're ready to rock and roll. You're welcome to the art world, you know? And so I'm over here struggling with like making paintings that are like really different from each other and stuff, and that can be almost idiotic. In that capitalist scheme, it's kind of idiotic. I would be one of those ones that would be eaten up by like Amazon. You know, I'm that mom and pop shop right now. Like
for sure.
But those thoughts have made me wonder like, oh man, I hope I'm making good decisions here.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you got to be able to live with yourself at the end of the day. And if things don't work out, we'll find a way. We'll find a way to keep. It doesn't take that much to really survive. That's the best of both worlds. You know, you're not sacrificing what you could be doing here in the studio so you're keeping this what you want it to be, and it might affect you monetarily or whatever. It might affect your income. So by not sacrificing this, it might look like you're sacrificing taking care, but then you just maybe got to figure that out and find a way to make that still work. Maybe you do a little bit of bouncing between the two.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't know. I mean, most artists in history, at the time of their life, a lot of them had their bread and butter pieces. They had the work that, you know, the bread and butter stuff.
Yeah.
kept them going. And they had like more difficult works, the more charged works that were like more difficult to be placed.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times those works gave weight to the easier to sell works. Having different like sides to you, I think keeps you from being bored, I guess. But
one of the things I'm interested in hearing about is, I remember, I don't know if you remember this, I don't know why you remember this, but I remember, because it still sticks in my mind, you were sitting down, I think we haven't seen each other in like probably the same thing, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years or something. We hung out and we were talking about what we were doing, and then we were talking about social media, and you were like, you just randomly threw it out there. You're like, do you know like what to do on Instagram? What to do on Instagram. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what I'm doing. And like, I was just wondering if you knew anything. I'm just trying to figure it out. And then fast forward now. Like, what is this guy talking about? So funny.
When did I ask you that?
Bro, this was like,
was it 2018?
I think it was a little bit before you graduated, maybe.
Okay, so the reason why I was asking is because, so the grad school program at ASU is 2.5, it's 3 years.
Yeah.
So the first half a year, you're just kind of messing around. And then you have 2 years and you're making all this work. Maybe I didn't mention this, but I treated my grad school program like a residency. I just showed up more with the vision of sort of this direction of figurative art that I wanted to pursue. I didn't know I was going to make paintings like I was now, but I just knew the certain type of personality I had in me and the mark. Anyways, the time had come up. I had painted all these paintings in 2 years and they're all finished. And it was time to, okay, well, I'm in Phoenix going to ASU, not really in the art center of the world. People are not really seeing this in the flesh. So I was like, I need a kind of, let me rewind real quick. A prerequisite to graduate with your master's, you have to have well-documented images of your work. So I had a friend of mine in town who was a photographer, and I kind of bit the bullet and paid this guy to because they were huge paintings and I couldn't capture them with my DSLR, my limited knowledge of photography, and just couldn't get the lighting right. Glare was always messing. So I got my friend I had to pay this guy to photograph my work. I had to get all my paintings in a U-Haul. It was like this big sacrifice, but having good images of your work is so important, I spent so much time on these paintings and I just didn't want them to go out there and just look like what they're not. And so I had all these images with me all of a sudden and they're high res. And I'm like, I think I should start posting these now. So about 6 months to a year before my MFA, I didn't know how to use Instagram really. I knew there was this hashtag thing going on and stories was kind of fairly new at the time. I think I had like 700 followers at the time. Maybe less than that. I was like, okay, I need to start photographing my work. And I had taken in progress photos and stuff. So I needed to start putting the stuff in there. The idea was just to I have all this work. There's people out there doing, this isn't completely new. So I just got to get it out there. So I was in this learning curve of just how to use it for my paintings. And my goal was that by the time I graduated my MFA, you'd have all my works documented, ready to go there. It's like the new website,
Absolutely.
You used to have a website as an artist. You do not need a website.
Yeah.
The only thing a website is good for now as an artist is for someone to go there and get your CV, download your resume. That's the only thing. Instagram is just the place.
Yeah.
Collectors go to it, curators for the most part now. And so when I finally got to LA and I made that connection with that artist I mentioned, and my name was kind of thrown out, when they got to go to my Instagram, they got to see my studio, my work, my personality. They got a little vibe of who I was. It wasn't this mystery. So, but yeah, it wasn't, there's a few paintings that I did that went kind of viral I didn't know they were going to, but they just started circulating and things naturally started. That's one of the things about Instagram too, is that the work can just be thrown into this loop that you don't even know who's seeing it and why people are bothering to follow what you're doing, especially when it's really personal. But I think people maybe saw funny things about the humor of life kind of in the work. Yeah, I did have some paintings that went viral I didn't expect. And one of them was it's called At the End of the Day. It's the nude male figure, which is me trying to take a sock off in the midst of all the clutter and life in the background. And some people wow, this is life. This is so funny, capturing the feeling of pathetic and trapped. And others were saying this is inappropriate, completely inappropriate. Some people were trying to say connected to really bad things, really bad things. Because sometimes when you're going to jump in the shower, you want to get the last bit of your dirty clothes in the laundry. Just throw it in there because you're about to do the laundry. Oh wait, throw these socks in there. Anyways, so I'm pretty much the male figure's nude, and then my daughter's walking near me, and just the proximity of a child nearby just walking around to a naked butt, just the proximity was enough to create tension. There's that whole the trickery of associations of imagery and things like that. It just created this like weird, that didn't seem right. And she was minding her own business in the picture, just walking through, like, and there's an iron there's like danger everywhere, and there's like sadness, and then there's a woman in the back showering, very peaceful. Because when you have young kids, sometimes a shower is like the vacation. It's the vacation. Yeah, absolutely. That's where And then when I started seeing it, I was like, wow, this is interesting. I thought this painting was just like very pathetic, but it had this reaction. And then the second one that went viral was like the first painting I did. It was my first solo show. I was almost done with the work, and it was missing something. It's all this quotidian everyday life stuff. It's like there's something really important that's like missing in this show. That's an important part of life. And it was like the quickie or the just attempt to make love with your spouse when life is crazy and hectic, and that's really complicated. Absolutely. It's an art form in and of itself. Absolutely. And so I just made this painting of this like kind of spontaneous moment where you're not really planning, and the fireworks just hit off, and but that moment, if you look at that painting, that moment is about to be interrupted because someone is awake and coming down the hall, and you can see my eye looking up. Like, my intention was to make a painting after that was just everyone on the couch kind of covered up watching TV next time, But once again, the association. And I think the only thing you see in that painting is like a butt crack and like maybe like half a nipple. Yeah. But I think painting using naturalistic colors brings things home a little bit more. If I were to do the whole thing monochromatic with these amazing colors and washes and the painting be so powerful, it's almost like it doesn't matter what's being depicted in there. And there's a lot of work that's very, very explicit, but it's just all is forgiven, or maybe not as home because it's locked behind this beautiful aesthetic. And maybe it creates an interesting conversation between the two, but for me, that was the point. The point was for it to be more actual. Yeah. And there's pillows on the ground, the dog's there, like, what's going on? And it's just this quick rush that's about to be interrupted. And I didn't title it. I should have titled it a rush, that an interrupted rush or something. But after that, I just went all over the place.
That's crazy.
And I was like, whoa, it's like,
how many followers do you have now?
Well, it just fluctuates in like 139K to 145K. Sometimes I'll post something about my life, like just like picture family, boom, you're like down like 1,000. Then you do like a painting, you're like, oh, you're up. It's like, but I kind of stopped counting like a while ago. Like, once you tend to notice when you're like dropping, and the droppings, you don't even know, some of these people, you don't even know who they are. They're bots at like 0 posts, like 5 posts, 0 followers, and they're private. It's like, what? Yeah. But that's another thing too. It's like, I get a lot of interactions from Instagram. Usually after shows, I get a lot of interactions from people that are not in the art world. And that to me something is really encouraging, because I now might be hitting like a nerve, transmitting something that maybe catches a layman by surprise. And then to think, if you're a layman, I know the art, it's nice when it's like exclusive and something different. You have to think about it and be intellectual, but it's nice when when you're hitting something simple, anyone can see it. And I've had people from all walks of life mention things about certain paintings that they relate to, and it's cool. Encouraging. Yeah. So yeah.
Can you talk about the wrestling and the tension between your tightrope of your audience?
The art world wants to believe that you're a genius, that you're unlike other artists, that you think deeply about what you're making, that you are entranced in this work, and therefore what you're making is just really, really special, and it's just not anyone can do this. And so if you seem sometimes if you come off a little too normal, or like maybe if you come off unsophisticated, maybe if the way you get ideas for your work is a different way other than intellectual stimuli from books, or checking the political temperature accurately and then internalizing that and making work, it can be tricky to talk about your work. And sometimes artists become less respected by how they talk about their work, or collectors might seem as though they are not as obsessed with their work, and they just are taken less seriously. And that's why it's hard for sometimes some artists to have humor in the way, and just present themselves as like who they really are. And sometimes we artists, we're just a mess. Like, I can be such a goofball. I love comedy. If I was an artist, I'd be some, I would be some cheesy thing. And you can see it in the work. It's,
they're both comedy and.
I was going to show you this trick.
Oh yeah, show me. I mean, 2 ways to put a ring on.
I don't know,
bro. You know
I have other stuff I gotta show you.
You know what Katie always tells me? She's always like, oh, Larry just called. Wait, the Magic Man? Because you remember you showed us the magic trick when we had COVID. You called me to show me magic when I had COVID.
Did I send you something?
Yeah, he sent me videos.
Was it the water bottle?
Yeah, bro.
The water bottle.
He's like, who is this guy, bro? Take him to Magic Castle, bro.
Oh, and here's the whole thing about magic real quick, talking about integration, okay? Yeah. I'm not a freak, okay? It's the cheesiest thing. Oh, you're into magic, you're so lame.
I think it's so cool.
When I was little, I loved it. I was, and then I learned a few tricks. One day I was at my parents' house, and my nephews and nieces were there. And at one point, they were all fighting. And they just couldn't get it together. So mad. And then I got everyone, hey, you guys want to see something? And I just pulled out this trick, and I'm just like, not that I had a trick in my pocket. I grabbed something that I saw, like I think a deck of cards, like, you guys want to see something? And I did this magic trick. Suddenly, the temperature of the whole room shifted. They were all laughing, smiling, and they all just got along and started playing.
That's awesome.
And I was like,
wow,
I'm going to get back into this on my free time just for my kids, because I do want to be that old guy hey, you want to see a trick? And then blow up people's minds.
No, seriously, bro. Well, if you ever get
plus, I love David Blaine and all that.
For sure. Well, if you ever take an apprentice, bro, let me know, because I'm definitely interested.
Sleight of hand is my favorite, but
that's sick, dude.
Yeah, so I don't know how we got into that. We were talking about being serious.
Yeah.
One of the things as an artist, we just want to be taken seriously sometimes, Absolutely. And if you don't take yourself seriously, how are others going to take yourself seriously? Yeah. But then I take myself not taking myself seriously very seriously.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
There's something disarming about that. It's like one of my favorite painters once said, it's like meeting your idol and you look down, you see their zippers down, or they stepped on, they have a piece of toilet paper on their foot. And you're just like, there's other people who have said that, like, if I saw so-and-so trip on a curb, I can just fall and die at that point. I can just say, oh, we're all just human and die. That doesn't mean I don't consider my works in the time they're made in. I am a straight guy with a family and a heteronormative relationship in shifting time. So there's I'm considering all those things. And there's a lot of tension where I live and with what does it mean to, and this is another thing that's really important about my work, is just what does it mean to be around children and raise kids? And what does it mean to be a good person, to be a good father, to be a good friend? How do you play without thinking of these things and making a mistake? And what is a mistake? Is your mistake? There's a lot of cliches about walking on eggshells in today's society, right? But I think people really are concerned. Like, sometimes I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not. In some people's views, I might be doing terrible things, raising my kids a certain way, and applied in other ways, but those are all really important questions. And then you get into other things of the history of art, what has been said. I think one of my favorite quotes from Eugène Delacroix, the 19th century French painter romantic, he said, "What drives men of genius is not new ideas, but the obsession with the idea that what has already been said, it's not enough." And so that's given me freedom to not try to reinvent the wheel of what it means to be painting, but just maybe we haven't maybe closed the door on the whole drama and terror and wonder of just everyday life and existence. And if we can't get to the nitty gritty there, then how are we going to get to politics, changing societies? But you can still change society without getting there. But now we're talking about changing societies. Oh my goodness.
No, dude. I love
I'm not trying to change society in any way. I am. I think a lot of my work is just wrestling with cynicism and having a childlike sense of awe and wonder again, tension between responsibility and ambition. Yeah, there's so much there. What else? It's just trying to think of other things I've thought of. Okay, to me, like, you can pursue art by just chasing the form of really try to create something that's an object that's special. And at the end of the day, you're making this special object. To me, that's only half of the equation. Like, for me, it has to have something very, very meaningful to me, like, within it. And sometimes it hurts to see these things go away. But I know if it's hitting something within me that's just nuanced, if it's transmitting something from within and help, then I'm not that unique. I mean, we're simultaneously unique and at the same time completely not unique, right? We all have a lot of similarities. Hey, if I'm really, really real with what I'm doing and it goes out there, it's going to connect. Because if I'm real and I'm not really that unique, it'll go out there and touch. I'm not that concerned with what a painting can do historically, but I'm more concerned with what a painting can do internally. I think I wrote that down somewhere. I'm trying to remember where. I should have looked at my notes. I write a lot of stuff down. And
well, that was a soundbite right there. Boom. Send out. Collectors take you seriously. Money.
No, it's like, I mean, I've had people collect. My favorite is when someone gets my work because they just connected with it. Yeah. And I was in an art fair once and a collector came up and said, I saw this painting and I was in this moment. I was that little girl in that painting. Wow. My parents were fighting outside. Father was inside the house. Mother was outside the house. And I just remember being in that middle. And my painting wasn't that situation. I was kind of in a weird rut. I couldn't think of any ideas. And so I was like looking out this slide door window and my wife is just like watering the grass and like a house. I'm just like, and I stole my posture from like Michelangelo's David, like, and I'm looking at it. And so to me, it was just more of like looking, just trying to get out of this rut. But to her, she saw her life in it. Wow. And
that's crazy.
That's really cool for me.
Yeah.
And leaving it open enough to others to jump in somehow. Yeah. And so,
dude, I mean, I remember earlier on trying to figure out story and still in that journey, especially when it came to music and even like films and stuff. I was always told that the best stories that are told are the specific ones. And when writing music and while telling stories, always be more specific. The more specific, the wider the audience. And I was
weird. Like, that sounds counterintuitive. The more vague, the more.
Yeah, but it really hit home. And when I see your work, and that's why it really inspired me early on too, because your work was like that, in my opinion. It was such a specific story. It's so specific to you, but it's so open that anyone can relate to all the emotions, because sometimes you can see some faces, you know what I mean? Sometimes you can't.
Yeah. So it's like the washer machine one. It's like not everyone has that washer machine. That's like a luxury, but everyone feels pathetic at times. Everyone's
exactly. It's the emotion that comes from that specific moment. You know what I mean? And so it's like when you can put yourself and write your story specific to even culturally specific context, people will always put their own meaning and story into it. And so when I see your work, that's how I feel. It isn't like I don't have to look like that necessarily or whatever, but I just know that that means something. I can relate to that in my life. And so I think it's really cool, even that woman's story, whether or not you intended for that to be. Yeah, it's just that you can tell stories so specific enough.
Well, there was tension in the painting, but it wasn't between. I mean, maybe because I'm inside outside, but just I think what people latch onto is those like invisible attributes of the tension, of the emotion, feeling pathetic, of fear, all those things you can't really put your finger on. But if you can transmit those things, you're in the business of the human story. Yeah, and those are the things that motivate us to do anything. You did this. I did this because I was afraid. I did this because I was ambitious. I did this because I didn't know what to do. I was indecisive and moral conundrums. And yeah, that's the art of life. But I think in grad school, we're taught. I mean, okay, I'll say this: originality. My goodness, man. We're taught to look for our thing real fast. What's this distinguishing factor, right? Thinking to myself, I thought that was like a lifelong endeavor. I thought you just really don't think about it that much. And if you kind of stay open to things you liked from the past, things you like in the present, things that you like that are unrelated to your craft. Like I get a lot of my inspiration from like funny home videos, stand-up comedy, just chilling with people that don't know anything about art, art itself. But in grad school, we're taught to find your niche, your thing,
Yeah.
you know, and that thing that you find, hopefully it's really important. How do I know it's important? Well, let's see. Is it the conversation of the day? You know, all these things. And then it lines up really, really well with certain people. It's just kind of like certain place, certain time, right work, right. Other people are just like, I'm not even in this ballpark. I'm way not. For me, I felt like the only way was just to circumvent that. And some artists were able to do that and stay and be remembered. But I think I'm not looking for originality of visually. I'm thinking more for like, not even an original attitude, but maybe like a not so common attitude as a painter in today's world.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a whole world of traditional oil painters, the atelier world, where they like talking about these big concepts of existence, philosophy, meaning, and they read Kant and all these things, and they're just so serious.
Yeah.
And it just, you can't have a break of humor within it. It just, and then there's other avenues that are really, really open, so open that there's no I have nothing to chew on, and I can appreciate it because just formally is beautiful. Life's neither of those. Life is not the Met Gala, but that's part of life. And life is not, you know, washing feet, or maybe that's a different, the pathetic humiliations. Life is both of those. So, capturing that in painting is so hard. But I mean, is that the integration we're talking about? Like,
yeah,
life
I think that's awesome. I think the part I think what's a good way to end it is like, I think when thinking about integration and thinking about being a master of integration, it's cool that specifically in your art, you see how all these different things that you love or are into, you put them together, you integrate them to make a whole piece, right? Like it's combining one thing to make it whole. And it's so sick is that like this piece is a whole, but it's also all of these pieces are a whole of you, you know? And I think it's cool because you take magic, you take home videos, and you take all these different things and you make it into this that then someone else who sees something else different and means something more to them.
Yeah.
You know?
See, I always wanted to make paintings and create this whole body of work that, like, in the future, if I ever stumble in something or something happens to me, I'm like in one of my paintings, and I want to feel that. And my sister told me that the other day. She's like, "Oh, I thought something." I'm like, "Oh, that'd be." And when you start hitting that, it's like, oh, there's something special, really fun about being able to be surprised by something in life. Like, oh, this can be like a painting. Like, this is a painting right here.
Yeah. About basically like what you're doing and what you're creating for people are like seeing everyday moments as something special. You could see like in a way of like, oh, this moment could be a painting because of how Larry sees things and how Larry paints stuff. And so now they're like almost like this mundane moment becomes something special to them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because they can connect it with at least one painting.
Yeah.
Someone's thought about this stuff, or at the very minimum, it's not nothing.
Yeah.
It's not a waste. It's not nothing. There's still structures of ultimate existence holding all things together in that very moment. There's so much happening when you're just doing some mundane thing. And yeah, if my paintings can sometimes remind myself of that, it's mainly, you know, reminding myself of those things. Yeah, just life can be more exciting. I can exist a lot better. I can exist a lot better that way.
All right, let me ask you these last questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Rapid fire, bro.
Rapid fire. Oh, I like the rapid fire.
They're going to be 1 to 3 sentences long, okay?
All right, let's go.
All right. You have a wide range of skills. How do you leverage this versatility in your creative work?
I just try to make sure the paintings are made in almost the same way I would work on anything else. Does that make sense?
Are there instances where being a jack of all trades has opened unexpected opportunities for you?
I can't think of. I know the answer is yes, but I have to have more time to think on that. I think being a perfectionist with, like, when I used to make music, I used to sit there for a long time trying to chop everything up perfectly and hear it over and over again. I think that bled into like restructuring paintings. I would always second guess everything, every melody I would put it, second guess it, keep tweaking it. And I still do that with my work. It just gives me comfort that it's still who I am as a person. Yeah. And so if anything, it just, maybe it didn't open the doors, but it confirmed certain things within me that I'm like, oh, this is just how I am. That's cool. How I work.
Well, I think that's perfect because, right, Master of Integration, the hope is that you can still dive deep into all these different interests and hopefully see that one day they come together. And so that's a great example of that. How do you manage to balance multiple interests and avoid feeling overwhelmed or scattered?
Deadlines. Just kidding. Oh, scattered. I'm always scattered. But I actually adopted the idea that it's part of the process. That if I don't do other things to try to get out of my bubble, then I'm stuck in this cycle of the bubble, and then I can't even see myself. I just make art about art. That worked for a while in history, not anymore.
Some argue that specialization is crucial for mastery. How do you respond to this perspective?
Specialization is crucial for mastery. I think to some extent you got to know something of what you're doing, but specialization, I mean, what does that mean? Is it specialization of technique, of application, or specialization in concept? I mean, there's some people that weren't technicians, but they were visionaries. I think specialization is such a broad term. You can think really great about creativity, and that's what drives your work. And so it's not necessarily a mechanical specialization but I think if you stick with something, your motifs will start to emerge. Your way of painting a hand will emerge, or an eyeball will emerge. I think it does work, but you need something outside to come in to inform that. If not, you're just you can get stuck in this, in this bubble, I guess.
How do you stay motivated and continue learning across various disciplines?
I'll just say for art, how to stay motivated. Sometimes it's really getting myself in a big mess with the work, just doing something really dumb into the painting, ruining it in a way, and then now having to fix it. Now I'm in problem solving mode. So before I was in inspiration mode, trying to get inspiration. Now I'm in problem solving mode, so I have no choice but to fix this. And then hopefully while I'm fixing it, while I'm changing things up, I'll get answers to other questions, and then I'm back in inspiration mode. That just popped out of my head out of nowhere, but I feel like that's been true. I
love that, bro. That's so good. Okay. What advice do you have for those who are hesitant to embrace their jack of all trades nature?
I'll take jack of all trades as to maybe even wanting to dabble into different forms of visual art. I want to be an abstract painter. It's you gotta if you're gonna be a painter, you gotta paint through all those things, paint through all those ideas. You'll land somewhere. And I think that's just what informs your work. I mean, if you spread too thin and you're trying to really equalize on everything, that might be a problem. But it's not bad to add to your main focus at the moment.
All right. What are your 2 top quotes?
I think I mentioned it earlier. It's the Delacroix one. What concerns those of genius is not new ideas, but the obsession with the idea that what has already been said is not enough. I like that a lot. It just makes it that you can reopen all those themes of what is the cliches of what is true love, purpose, the transience of life, all those things. And you can just always plop those questions into the contemporary world, and you have a whole new set of potentials. The second one's not even a quote. It's just this idea of tenacity over facility, which is I always choose the path of tenacity. Paintings that arrive at their destination not through facility, not through finesse and just being able to do it, but just the sheer moving forward. Just the tenacity of just continuing and not giving up. Yeah, just not giving up on a painting. Even if it's a throwaway, just you keep at it. And this tenacity over facility has been, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing all that, bro. Okay, so I have 2 quotes that are what I'm thinking about right now, and I want to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Oh, I've heard that before. Yeah, I like that. It's been criticized a lot, though.
Really?
Well, I think it's been used in the context of the economy. If you throw in a lot into maybe the elite, it just lifts everyone up or something like that. But I think in general, it's a really good quote.
Yeah.
Have you heard that before?
No.
I've just heard it kind of have this weird connotations attached to other. I guess it can always be used any quote can be used in a negative way, I guess.
Yeah. I heard it in a context of in a doctorate program filled with writers, and the lead writer kept on saying that it was a seminary, and so he was basically explaining if you're trying to come here to become the best writer of all time, this may not be the place for you, but if you want to be a part of a community that if one person is winning, then we all win.
I like that. Yeah, and that
yeah. And so it's this communal thought of the people that you're around. If you help one succeed, then you're helping everyone succeed.
I also think about it one of the things I like about it, sometimes this thing you can't, like, this energy underneath is sometimes that's what we're not missing. We're trying to make something happen, but we need a tide to lift us up and lift the whole, maybe the attitude or the morale of a group or an army or just a creatives. I think I like it. When I listen to it that way, it's like
awesome.
Interesting.
I like that, dude. And the last one is, if it's not good news for the poor, it's not good news.
Oh, that one's convicting. Yeah, it's not good. So if it's not good news for the poor, it's not good news. That's good.
Yeah. How can people find you?
The easiest way would be through Instagram at Larry Madrigal. They can also go to my website, larrymadrigal.com, or they can go to, if they want to see like past works from exhibitions, you can go to nicodemegallery.com and then go to their artists, and then they'll have installation shots of past work.
Nice. Cool. Lastly, what do you want to be remembered for?
What I be remembered for? Encouraging works in dark times.
Love that.
Uplifting works in difficult times.
Yeah. Awesome.
Maybe.
In this aesthetic relief. I love that, bro. That's so good.
It's not. I didn't
I know.
coin that.
It's so good. Anyways, so thanks so much, bro, for being on this podcast. I really appreciate you, man, and I'm excited to see what ends up happening with everything. Good luck in Bucharest, and look forward to hearing what goes down. But yeah, Masters of Integration podcast. Hope that you can see and know that you may be a jack of all trades, but a master of integration. Keep pursuing all the things that are around you, and believe that it'll all come together in its time. So keep on creating and keep on pursuing the things that are inside of you.
Amazing.
Cool. All right. Thanks, bro.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Awesome, bro.